Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Road to Recovery podcast. This podcast is a platform for education, discussion, and conversations on mental health. I'm your host, Amira Shah, and in this podcast, you'll get to know more about the therapeutic process, insight into life from the perspective of the psyche, and also join me in exploring current issues with other practitioners. I specialize in grief, but I'm always interested in learning about the human experience of the mind, heart, and spirit. So join me on this journey of in-depth learning about ourselves and the world we live in. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Science of the Soul. Today I have with me Mr. Dan Davis. Dan is the proud private practice owner of MetaMinds Therapy. He is also a drone expert. So he runs Australia's #1 drone YouTube channel, and he has a course on the Fearless Drone Academy. And on top of that, he also has 2 podcast shows, one on MetaMinds and the power of showing up. So I'm really excited and interested to speak with you, Dan, and thank you very much for joining me on the show.
Of course, I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
So I guess first things first, tell us all about a little bit about your work,
Yeah.
drone channel, and your podcasts.
Yes. It sounds like a lot when you present it like that. So I've been running a private practice now, MetaMinds Therapy, for 2 years, and I've been operating as a counsellor for 5 years. So when I finished my master's degree and when I was going through my master's, I knew within myself that I was going to go into private practice, but it happened actually a lot quicker than I was expecting. So it's one of those moments where there's like a crossroad, and it's, the option is to play it safe or to take a risk. And so it's worked out really well, and I'm extremely busy with clients and expanding the business. So that's a full-time job. I work 4 days a week in the practice, and then I also, the other available days, I create YouTube content for my drone channel. So create a lot of drone videos on the latest releases, comparisons. I do giveaways. I do a lot of stuff around helping people overcome their fears as well. Their anxieties when they're flying, or maybe they've crashed and they're struggling to kind of fly their drone again or build the confidence. But that's the niche that I'm really trying to tap into, is that, the mindset as such, the mindset and mental health. Because a lot of people have told me that they get a lot through flying their drones. It's phenomenal for their mental health. They get to go out in the sun, they get to be present, they're really focused on what they're doing. And for a lot of people, they've told me that's been extremely helpful for them through some tough times. It means a lot to a lot of people. So I thought that's an area that isn't being touched on, is the mental health side of drone operators. So that's how the Fearless Drone Academy came about. I basically was noticing that was a trend. A lot of people were anxious and asking me questions all the time. Hey, how do I fly? How do I build my confidence? How do I not crash?
Wow.
So that's how that all started. And the podcasts, the MetaMinds podcast is what actually led to MetaMinds Therapy, the private practice. And that was a podcast I started when I was doing my bachelor's degree in psychological science. And
What led to the practice?
Yeah, so it was I guess in the sense of it was just a natural progression to that. The name transitioned across. I was already having open conversations with my friend in the podcast, and then we were getting a lot of high caliber guests on who were huge authors and personalities in their space. And so that was fascinating because, we were talking to a lot of thought leaders, and that transitioned into me wanting to open my own private practice. So then the podcast became more of a conversation between my friend and I. As opposed to just getting guests on and talking to them. It just became more about, our deep conversations, which is how it all started in the first place. Yeah, so that's an interesting journey in itself. And then that actually led to me becoming the host of the Power of Showing Up podcast through the Raise Foundation, which was a company I was working for a couple of years there. And I became the host of their podcast because of the MetaMinds podcast. So that all just kind of, it all worked together and all slotted in perfectly. Not that you can predict that ahead of time, but it just, looking back at it, it's beautiful how it's all aligned.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So if you could just, I know this is an end of podcast sort of question, but I just got to ask you now. If you could give that one advice to novice practitioners that are starting out based on your experience of how one thing led to the other, do you have a piece of advice for them? Because it's a really impressive journey.
Yeah, no. I would probably say that, and it's a weird kind of thing to say, but some of the jobs that I had, they made me grow more as a person and a practitioner purely because they didn't align hugely with my values. So some of the roles that I was in, I felt like they were very funding driven, or they weren't client focused, right? And so for me, like, that's why I'm a therapist, right? I want to work with people, I want to help people, and I want to be ethical through that process and develop myself so that I can become a more grounded practitioner and person. So I found that there were value conflicts for sure in certain roles I had in the past, and some of the presentations that I was seeing actually made it very clear to me that that's not the type of presentation that I want to continue doing for the rest of my practice, even though I gained a lot from it. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, diversity of experience, right?
Right.
Trying different roles, not diving straight into private practice,
Right.
because, that can be quite taxing already after finishing a degree to dive straight into building a business.
Yeah.
So I'd say, the connections I gained, the perspective I gained through the different roles that I've taken along the way have definitely grown me and put me in a position where I've kind of gone, do I want to continue trying to find something that aligns with me, or do I want to create something that aligns with me? So
Okay.
that's kind of how that all happened.
Yeah, yeah. That's really, oh, that's wisdom right there.
Mm.
Thank you for sharing that. So let's talk about your actual practice right now. Who do you see? Who do you work with?
Yeah. So I work with a variety of presentations.
Mhm.
When the practice started, I was working a lot with carers. So I was running like a carer counselling service previously before I transitioned into private practice. So I still see a few carers. I would say that's a staple of the type of work I do. But then, I work with, it's so hard to condense it, right? Like, I'm sure we'll get into it as we go, but there's definitely an interest area or a niche that I'm going down that path. But I would say I work with a lot of men. I find that I get a lot of private bookings from men. And so that's the kind of work that's really fulfilling for me. There's a lot behind why that's fulfilling for me, which I'm sure again we'll get into, but that for me is great. I just love that connection when a man who potentially isn't emotionally attuned, hasn't been given the space to be okay with being emotional or unpacking emotions or sitting with discomfort, and then to having, another man across the room from them give them that space and allow them to honor themselves, and then seeing that growth and to see them change, that to me is really fulfilling, because that's something I guess I've questioned a lot in myself, is how does being a man look? Like, what is that? Like, how, because sometimes I don't, when I was going through my studies, I didn't really know, like, I don't know if I fit in as the mold of what a man is as such. And so that for me is fascinating, when I'm able to give men a different space to unpack emotions and be raw and honest and challenge that discourse that, men don't talk about emotions, or emotions are weakness, or a lot of that discourse that can go around for men in society. So yeah, I would say, like, men, I work with adolescents, I work with a lot of women, I work with couples, all sorts of presentations, anxiety, depression, other mental health disorders, creativity, career counseling, all
Mm.
sorts of things. A lot of trauma work as well. So yeah, I would say for me, like, that's actually another piece of advice I would give to my younger self, is just working with all presentations, because you won't know. A lot of the time it's hard to know exactly, unless there's something that just strikes you and you're like, that's something I'm clearly passionate about. For me, it took a little while to work with different presentations and go, okay, I really enjoy working with adolescents. I really enjoy working with men. I enjoy working with creatives. And that's something that I really enjoy. And then everything else I enjoy as well. So it's trying to find, that priority of where I want to go as well with the practice.
So would you say that the bulk of your work nowadays is kind of centered around working with men and adolescents? Or is that just your preferred cohort because that's where you shine brightest?
Yeah. So I would say I definitely get a lot of men and adolescents that come through. The next transition is I do want to start running a men's group. So that's the next natural progression in my mind, because I joined one not long ago, gained a lot from that, and saw how much the other men were gaining from that experience. So for me, that's like something that would be extremely fulfilling with all my facilitation skill set and all the counselling knowledge. That makes a lot of sense to transition into that. So yeah, I do work with a lot of men. I work with a lot of adolescents, but then also I would say I get a lot of variety, because I'm doing a combination of telehealth and in-person sessions. And so depending on what the referrals are coming through, or if it's a private session or a supervision session, I do get a fair bit of variety still at this stage. So I definitely wouldn't say it's niched right now.
Right. Okay. And, to be honest, it's really nice to have that variety as well.
Oh yeah, 100%. I love that.
Hey everyone! As you might know, my work often centers around grief and trauma. I'm excited to share 2 resources that I've developed to help in these areas. First, my children's book titled The Truck Family is designed to help kids navigate grief in a meaningful way. Many of us were not taught about grief and loss as kids, but let's allow our young ones these days to explore it in a supportive way. It's available as an ebook, a soft copy, and an audiobook. You can find it on my website at aroadtorecovery.com. That is AROAD2recovery.com. The second resource is the Culturally Informed Trauma Workbook. It's a practical tool for both individuals and practitioners alike, filled with interactive materials to support ongoing healing. You can also find this on my website or on gumroad.com. That is GUMROAD.com. I hope these resources can provide the support and guidance you're looking for. If you want more information about them, please check out the respective podcast episodes on them. Now, let's get back to our show. So what aspect of running groups with men, if I'm correct, did I get that correct?
Yeah.
What aspect of running groups with men are you keen to get into, and what's the inspiration apart from having good experience being part of a men's group?
Yeah. So I think one big thing is community, right? That's something, and that idea of tribe, trying to find your tribe. So for me, like, I've got a really good group of friends and I can have deep conversations with a lot of my friends, but the idea of deep work is really fulfilling to me. So I find that I have that deep work in a therapy session, and I'm noticing that I'm getting a lot of growth and progression from clients I'm working with. But I guess because I've got that facilitation skill and I really enjoyed doing that when I was working in the schools, that to me naturally feels like a fulfilling progression, right? I get to use my skill set. I get to work with men who want to work on themselves. And I feel that there's an element of like, if I'm passionate about that and if I'm excited about that, I know that the men will get a lot more out of it. So I think that's where the inspiration comes, is diving into a group experience myself, really enjoying it, noticing a lot of growth in myself, and enjoying the structure of how they set it all up. That's something I love, having like a clear agenda for a group, obviously flowing outside of that and being flexible with it. But that was something I noticed with this particular men's group was, we focused on particular themes and topics and we unpacked them. And then you would then reconnect with the men outside of those sessions to then unpack those topics deeper.
Like
So that to me is exciting. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So if I understand correctly, your past experience was a group setting, and then whatever that came out in the group setting, the facilitator will take that up with the individuals one-on-one outside outside the group setting. Is that
So what would happen is, like, they had multiple facilitators who would hold a session
okay?
and would talk about a theme or a topic. And there was, I think, 15 other men there. And so what would happen is, after that session, the facilitators would encourage the participants to engage amongst themselves. So the facilitators wouldn't reach out, but, I might call Joe or Rob or whatever. I'm just making up names. I might just call them and we might talk through, identity, or we might talk through ego, or we might talk through, how like masculinity and how we show up in the world as a man. So yeah, that's kind of how that would look. There would be a theme and a couple of threads of conversations throughout the session. And then it was encouraged that you continued those conversations with the men outside.
So who would reach out to who? The facilitators reaching out to the participants, or participants reaching out to the facilitators?
So participants reaching out to participants. So the
Oh,
facilitators wouldn't be, yeah, yeah.
participants.
So the facilitators would not be, early on they might call you, but then they would pull away and it was participant to participant.
I see. So that's, I guess, the bonding
For
aspect.
sure. And that's that tribe. That's that, creating that community, which was extremely fulfilling for me. I could see that impacted a lot of the men. And so, I'm a firm believer of like experiencing things to then make sense if that aligns with you.
Yeah.
So after doing that, I felt like a change. I felt there was something in me that was really open to that.
Mm.
And it felt fulfilling and I enjoyed it and I love being a participant. So yeah, naturally I'm like, I would love to be in that space. I would love to be a facilitator and encourage and, foster those communities.
Oh, I wish you all the best. I'm sure you'll be great.
Appreciate it. Yeah, I'm
Would you
very
do it
excited.
alone? Would you do it with, another male facilitator? What do you have in mind?
Yeah, the plan is to start relatively small. So I guess the idea would be have groups of maybe up to 6 people.
Mm.
So starting it on my own at that point, creating a curriculum and creating a process. So the idea that I really enjoyed from this other experience was that they had a 9-week program and then you would go through themes each week and connect each week with the participants. And so for me, that's something that excites me, integrating some of my counseling understanding and research and putting that into the themes that we explore each week. So that would be the plan. And then ultimately, if things go well and as things start to grow, I would then build the group larger and potentially have someone else on. But yeah, the idea is to start it and just have a couple of experiences and see how
Yeah.
it sits.
Yeah. Yeah, and it'll probably unravel and it'll tell you where to go and how to develop it based on
Exactly.
the data that you receive and the
That's
feedback.
right.
Yeah.
Yep. 100%.
Oh.
Yeah.
And what about career counseling? You mentioned that just now. And to be honest, I haven't really come across too many career counselors apart from within the university space.
Hmm.
Yeah, can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So I guess naturally when a referral might come through or someone privately books, occasionally you talk about career path and you talk about trajectory, right, of what their future looks like. And so, yeah, I noticed that that was something that, again, really interested me because it was my experience of not having any idea what I wanted to do at all when I was young, right? So I really like working with adolescents through their career because, again, they're at that vulnerable age where there's a lot of pressure. Parents are typically pushing them to figure out their lives and what they're going to do next. And so, that's something I know all too well, like not having any idea where to go, trying to figure it out, going down an IT path and a web design diploma and going, is this something I want to do? And then going, okay, this doesn't feel right. What's my next path? And then transitioning to psychology. It's just, it can be really hard to figure out what those next steps are. So to me, that's again another fulfilling area that I feel connects with almost like an inner child part of me or a part of me that was maybe struggling through that phase in my life. Yeah, so I combine a few different things. Like I've done a bunch of different things where I've actually integrated AI as well and done some deep research with a client through like we've done their values. So we've worked through all their values to identify what's most important to them,
Mhm.
worked through like a personality test to identify what their personality type is, and then to unpack what careers potentially gel with that type of personality. And then done some other work around, interest areas, what they excel in at school potentially, things that they're really inspired by. And then we would put all of that into an AI model and de-identify it to try to create like a deep learning of some recommendations around, different areas that might interest them. And then I get that client to then go out and research those different careers, learn about them, call universities. And to me that, yeah, it seems like it's a nice fit. It's almost like an offer in some way. I don't know whether at some point I'm going to push more of that on my website around career counselling because again, that's quite fun for me. There's like a playfulness to that
Mm.
where I find that when they're coming to me with a lot of stress because there's a lot of pressure on them to figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah. And the pressure comes with a financial tag as well.
Yeah,
Uh,
100%.
so when you're working with clients, particularly in career counseling, is it mainly younger clients, people who are early in their careers, or people who are looking to switch careers? Because you've been
Yeah,
through a couple of those yourself, right? From lived experience.
yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, it's been a combination of both for sure. So definitely people who are transitioning out of careers and they're trying to figure out what that next leap is for them. That's definitely something I've worked through. And then I typically find that like adolescents and young adults is what I get. People who are 16, 17, maybe young 20s, early 20s. They're the types that typically come through. And then definitely the career transitions, which I've found that with the career transitions in particular, they typically present in another way. So they present as like burnout or they present as some sort of like work-life balance that they're struggling with. And then it gets to the point that they're able to identify that this is something they're really struggling with and they're not enjoying their work and they don't feel fulfilled potentially in their role. And then that's naturally where it might go.
Mm.
They say, "Oh, I've considered other careers. Is that something we can talk through?"
Yeah,
Yeah.
that sort of data can also feed really well into this model that you've created, which sounds really incredible. What an idea.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely keen to expand on it and yeah, try to figure out different ways, but it's exciting. It's a fun way of trying to get as much data as you can. And again, I think back to my younger self and there's just so much information out there now and there's so many tools we can use to gather that information that I didn't have when I was younger, right? And I had to figure it out as a lot of people did.
Mm.
So I guess I'm thinking like, well, how can we harness some of that power to
Mm.
make things a little, to have some more informed decisions around our next step in life.
Yeah. Look, as you're thinking, I kind of had a little memory flash where
Mm.
I think I remember doing a careers sort of psychology test to see, what career I'm best suited for. And I remember how rudimentary it was.
Mm.
Results that came out was really unhelpful. And when
Yeah.
I tried to follow that, it bombed. It bombed hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I remember that.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
that was
100%.
years ago.
That's a common experience for sure. I've heard that from a lot of people as well. It's just a routine questionnaire potentially, right? Or it's just a general kind of, oh, maybe you would be interested in this. It's not really backed by anything.
No, this was actually done as a psych unit. It was
Oh.
a really extensive questionnaire. It was one of those things that you needed to purchase if you did it on your own, like for $50 or $100. But because we had to do an assignment out of it, we were supposed to do the questionnaire, analyze the data, and it was
Mm.
based on personality. Look, honestly, I can't remember. This was literally 20 years ago. So yeah, and I remember my result was, get this.
Mm.
One was something to do in sales.
Okay.
I can do sales
Yep.
for products that I'm really passionate about. I've done that, and they were all therapeutic resources. So I think I was good at that, but I'm not a salesperson in the core. And then the other one that was stronger was an immunologist.
Mm.
I was like,
Interesting.
what is that?
Yeah.
So yeah, something in the medical field or allied health field. Anyways, I didn't.
Mm.
Yeah, it was just really bizarre. And at the time, I was living. Well, I did my degree in Australia, but then I
Mm.
went back to my country of origin, which is Singapore, and it wasn't really a thing. Either it wasn't really a thing, or it would be very awkward for me to get into that field with a psych degree.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Like,
Yeah.
I would have needed some other sort of paperwork or started at a different sort of level. And then, like, yes,
Mm.
I remember that. How bizarre. Which
That's interesting.
is it? It's so
It's
weird.
just interesting how like talking about it has brought out that memory for you and you're like reliving it and you're like, oh, that was actually an experience I had. That's a clear
Yeah.
memory.
Yeah, and I actually do remember that because also back then in Singapore, mental health industry wasn't even a thing, it's highly stigmatized even till now.
Yeah.
But it's progressed so much, especially after COVID. So I'm very happy for that, for my fellow Singaporeans. Hello, dear listeners. If you would like to reclaim control over your nervous system, navigate your grief, your trauma, or deal with cultural matters that are causing you distress, I invite you to book in with me for a free 15-minute consult. In this consult, I will learn about your concerns, provide you with some tools and techniques to calm your nervous system, as well as give you a customized treatment plan. Simply jump onto my website to book online, or you can email me at hello@roadtorecovery.com. That is AROAD 2recovery.com. The other thing that I wanted to mention is that our values do change over our lifetime, and our personalities, maybe in the core bits, don't change too much. But yeah, I mean, if you've done your personality, like a Myers-Briggs 10 years ago compared to now, you might see some differences as
Oh,
well.
yeah.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah. And that's something, I talk about extensively with clients before we even go into doing a personality test because, typically personalities do change over time, right?
Mm,
There's shifts to values as well over time. And so I find that quite interesting when, especially if like, maybe a parent, for example, might be there for that first session just to, for me to go through confidentiality and whatnot. And then just asking the parent, oh, did you have your career figured out at 17, for example, or did you know what you were going to do when you were younger? And a lot of the time it's no, I had no idea, right?
clever.
Um, so that can be quite interesting as well, just to address that, because then I'll go, yeah, I feel the exact same. At 17, I had no idea what I wanted to do. And it wasn't until I was like, mid-20s that I was kind of like, oh yeah, maybe this could be a path kind of thing.
So normalizing that from an outsider, yourself,
Mm,
who's an expert and a professional, and also from within the family.
100%. Yeah, yeah. I think it's just an important thing to put out there, right? It's one of those things that it's just doesn't naturally come out in the session anyway. It's not like a parent's going to bring that or a
Yeah.
child's going to bring that. So I feel like that's quite an important thing just to put out there because it can be quite exhausting. And also it's more common than ever now for people to change careers, right? In, when their when their parents were younger, it was a little bit more common to potentially follow on the family path, or potentially you were just fixed to one career and you wouldn't change that career. It was too much of a change, or it wasn't even normalized. Where
Mm,
now it's just normalized that people do change careers rapidly, and it's not as big of a deal as maybe it used to be presented.
yeah. Yeah. And I remember a time whereby it's like, well, you're gonna put down all these different things that you've done. People are gonna think you can't make up your mind. And
Mm,
shifted away from that, going like, actually, I've done X number of years doing this and that, and all that together. Look at what I'm bringing to the table.
yeah, 100%.
Unique set of skills. So yeah. Anyways, thank you for sharing that. It's very cool. You've got quite a few things tucked up your sleeve
Yeah.
for your future in your private practice. Can you tell me a little bit more about the creative side of you? Because it seems like you're doing this drone stuff, you did the podcasting, even in terms of your work with counseling with the different groups, different clientele groups, and your the men's group that you're thinking of doing. Everything sounds very creative. So can you tell me a bit more about that source that's within
Mm,
Dan that is flourishing with ideas?
yeah, no, great question. It's a tough one to answer because I don't always put myself in that creative box for some reason. Like, even though I'm clearly doing creative pursuits,
Mm.
yeah, sometimes I
Your
think I
shirt
down.
is very creative looking as
Yeah,
well.
yeah,
So for people who won't be able to see him because this is only audio, he's wearing this kind of colorful-ish, muted colorful-ish shirt with lots of different shapes,
yeah.
like circles and rectangles and different stripes and
Different
zigzag.
patterns. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah,
yeah. So from
definitely it.
far, I would think that you're actually a musician.
There you
If
go.
I didn't know you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
People
Beautiful.
are different. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, I guess it's like I think when I think about creativity for myself, I think that my creativity, I don't even know if this is going to make sense, but it kind of comes from the emotional awareness that I have. I feel like I'm so in tune with myself emotionally, which can sometimes be, the opposite where we overthink or we can kind of get caught up in the weeds of thought. But I find that that's something that inspires a lot because a lot of the stuff I'm doing is heart driven.
Mm,
So when I think about the men's group, the idea isn't, I want to create the most creative men's group, the most cutting edge men's group. My thing's all
more
about,
ego driven.
right. It's like, I want to create a community. I want to create a tribe. I want to help people have meaningful experiences. And that's the same with my counseling. When I think about the drone course that I developed, again, it's like, that's something, yeah, you could look at that as a creative endeavor, something that I've creatively gone down that path. But when I presented that idea and when I started thinking about fleshing that out, the intention again was, well, how can I help people who are trying to overcome something, which is a fear of flying? So again, it's more emotion focused. It's more, how can I help people overcome some of their challenges that are coming up, whether that's their own restrictions or whether that's something else. So yeah, I find that that's maybe where my creativity comes from, which you could argue that creativity is typically quite deeply emotional anyway.
Mm,
Right. Not in every context, but you think about musicians, you think about artists, you think about people who are creating art, typically they're emotion driven.
mm.
That's my perspective anyway. So I guess, yeah, I guess that does make a lot of sense. And I think that's maybe that kind of clarifies it for me actually, because I've kind of I've always
Well, you're
seen it as,
welcome.
yeah, thank you for that. Thank you for that. Because that makes a lot of sense as I'm saying that. Like at first I'm like, will that make sense if I explain it that way? But I guess it does make sense in that context of like people who are creative are typically emotional beings.
Yep, yep. High
Yeah.
EQ. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what therapy is, right? It's an art and a science
Yeah.
that
100%.
walk hand in hand.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks
100%.
for sharing that. Now,
Thank you for asking that question.
yes, of course. Quick question.
Yep.
I learned from you earlier that before we started recording that you do also run supervision. Can you say a few words on, yeah, on your work around supervision or facilitating supervision groups if you do that?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so, yeah, I've been running individual supervision sessions now for about a year and a half, I would say, pretty consistently. And recently I transitioned into offering group supervision. And so for me, that was because the supervision piece is refreshing, right? There's a different energy in the room when you're working with someone who's a peer.
Yep.
And so that's, I guess, like we spoke about it a little bit. Diversity is like something that I really enjoy. I enjoy that diversity of experience and especially in my work. And potentially, you could see that also as like a downfall because you have to, my attention can be split a lot between different areas. But yeah, I find that that's something I really enjoy having a diversity of experience, diversity of presentations. And so supervision for me is really fulfilling. I find I actually gain a lot out of that for myself to validate, who I am as a counselor and how I am in this space. But yeah, I really love that work. And so group supervision again marries up those two skills that I've been
Yep.
developing. Uh,
Yeah.
and it's great. Like, we had one last month and I gained so much out of it myself because we're talking about boundaries. We're talking about, disclosure in a counseling space and what the appropriate amount of disclosure is. And if disclosure does serve a place in counseling or whether that's wrong. And, we spoke about a lot of stuff to do with boundaries and wearing the different hats of personal life and professional life.
Mm.
So again, that kind of stuff is fulfilling because it helps me grow as a person. But I'm also seeing that in real time as other people are having those light bulb moments.
Yeah, wow. And especially when you're practicing online in terms of boundaries, right? It's quite blurred unless, you go to a certain office space and you sit there and you see your clients. And then, whereas, you see your clients in your office at home, it,
Yes.
there's so many different nuances given how the therapeutic mediums and modalities, not modalities, medium has changed in the last few years. So such important topics, and it sounds that that's something you're passionate about as well.
Yes, definitely. That's something that I see myself wanting to do more of is the group supervision in particular,
Mm,
uh, which is so fascinating to me because I think back to high school and I think back to English and I think back to like having to do presentations. And
Yep.
that was something that I was frozen by. I remember asking teachers, "Oh, can I do my presentation in the lunch break?" Do I have to do it in front of everyone? And then, fast forward to me running groups with 30 people in a room.
Oh, you're
It's
like the gangster now.
just wild. It's so wild. I'm like, sometimes I journal to my younger self and I'm like, it's just fascinating. And, I'm not special at all. Anyone can do that. It just takes experience and time, right?
And
It takes
and
practice, right?
yeah.
Working through that discomfort. Yeah.
I remember I was actually mute
Mm.
in school when I had to, like, during oral examinations, and it's just me and the teacher, okay? It's not even in front of a class. I just sit there, and I was a top student, so I just sat there and just
Yeah,
said
right.
nothing
Yeah.
for 15 minutes, and she kept going like, "I know you can do this, just say a few words, you got this." And I stared at her and just said absolutely nothing. I still passed because oral was like 10-20%, so it didn't really matter at that time. And then fast forward 10 years later, I was like in senior high school, and it was like my final for the IB diploma because I did the IB diploma, the
Mm.
baccalaureate diploma, and I did Spanish. So it was just again me and my teacher. I was a decent student. I wasn't like an A-star student, maybe like a BA student.
Yeah.
And it was ab initio Spanish, and he's got a tape recorder, and he has to send this tape to Geneva for marking, right? And I've been with this teacher for 2 years. I love him. His name is Marcos Duran Vargas. He's just amazing. He's from Chile, and he's an expert in IT, so he taught 2 subjects. He taught IT and Spanish. And I had to introduce my name and my number, like my ID number. And, it was on me. Okay. And it's like, me llamo, Amira, mi número, blah, blah, blah. But I just completely froze. And he looked at me and he picked up his ID tag and he pointed at it, like, and mouthed, "Say your name."
Yeah.
And I said his name. I was just like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. It was so bad. Thankfully, he got permission to wipe it and give me a second shot at it because he was like, "What is wrong with you?" And similarly now, yeah, like I'll be running a webinar in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
I ran a workshop last month. I was lecturing for how many years?
Yeah.
So yeah, I totally understand how you
That's
feel
awesome.
going
Well,
on.
what do you put that down to from your experience? How have you been able to overcome that discomfort or fear, would you say?
It was because I needed the grades. It was
Okay.
exam, pressure, and practice, practice, practice. I think it came out of my high school English subjects and literature subjects because we had to keep presenting, and the theory of knowledge, like the philosophy subject, we just had to present. So it went from reading off a script,
Mhm.
memorizing the script, having slides, and just having all these visual prompts and cues, and having a very, very supportive environment. Like I knew who I was talking to, like my classmates and my teacher, because we've been together for a couple years.
Mm.
Being that took the pressure off, and over time I had no choice, honestly. So if I didn't do it, I'd fail. So,
Right.
but thanks for asking.
Of course.
I might have to wrap up now, but it was absolutely wonderful to speak with you. Can you please tell our listeners how to find you for your therapeutic services, supervision services, and all the other cool creative things that you've got out there?
Definitely. Of course. Thank you so much. So for my therapeutic services and supervision, it's through MetaMindsTherapy.com. And that website's actually getting a huge overhaul soon. So there'll be clear, distinct services on there for my supervision and individual and couples and all that kind of stuff. So that's through MetaMinds Therapy. For the drone side of things, it's Dan's Tube, like YouTube, but danstube.tv. That's my drone channel, and that's all the socials attached to that. I've got the exact same name and spelling.
Okay.
And then the Fearless Drone Academy. So fearlessdrone.academy for that website.
All right, and I'll put all those links in the show notes. when we publish this. And let's take a quick screenshot photo of us talking together. Is that cool?
Yeah, 100%.
Alrighty. 1, 2, 3. Yes. Thank you, Dan. This was so awesome. I really appreciate talking with you.
I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
And we'll catch up soon.
Definitely.
Alrighty. Thanks, everyone. Bye.